Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Now, one of the reasons I record these daily shows is to highlight how technology is transforming every industry, and often areas that you wouldn't normally associate with technology. For example, a few days ago we spoke with Alex Klein at Yoga Trail about how technology was uniting yoga lovers and teachers. And a new trend that I'm noticing is that app fatigue means that most of us don't want 5 pages of apps on our smartphone anymore. Especially because the reality is most of us only use 5 to 10 of them on a regular basis. But the bigger trend here is rather than having lots of apps, why not have one that does everything that you need? And this is just one of the ideas behind the Jubal app. Today's guest never seemed to know when classical concerts were taking place or where. And it occurred to him that it would be useful to create one app that would let him know if a concert is taking place within easy reach of his location. So rather than download separate apps for the Royal Albert Hall in London and the Symphony Hall here in Birmingham in the UK, he now has one app where all the country's venues and orchestras are playing. Now, I've heard the app advertised over on Classic FM a lot at the moment. But can one app unite music lovers, venues, performers, orchestras and promoters? Buckle up and hold on tight because I invite you to let me beam your ears all the way to Bristol so we can speak with Francis Hornack, who's going to tell us all about Jubal and why it is much more than just a classical music app. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Francis. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yes, well, my name is Francis Hornack, and I'm an angel investor, for want of a better expression, and I have invested in a number of small startup companies, and I'm quite involved with them, a director of some of them, and so I provide sort of guidance and input. And I'm quite motivated by that, in fact. So that's basically what I'm doing at the moment.
Fantastic. Now, I invited you on the show today to talk about a new classical music show guide. So can you tell me more about it and also what differentiates it from all the other apps out there?
The app is called Jubal, spelt Jubal. It's basically an events app with a focus on classical events, classical music shows. But not exclusively. And one of the reasons for that is that, in my opinion, one of the big winners with this app are the venues. And venues often have quite a mixture of different types of events. And basically, we're putting them all in. But we have a control within the app so that you can see what you want to see. And by default, it's set to classical when you first open up the app. So it is targeted at a classical audience, but you can go to those settings and change them and see whatever else is on in the area as well.
So I've got to ask, what's the story behind Jubal? I mean, can you tell me more about the inspiration that spurred that idea and how it became an app and a website? Or, I mean, did you go through a pain point yourself and thought, I'm going to do something about this?
Well, actually, it was inspired because I'm on a trust board for a London chamber music. This is a charitable trust, and it's very difficult for orchestras in the UK to raise money in order to be able to do the events that they want to do. And around the board, we were all talking about ways we could try to raise money, and I threw out the idea of developing an app. Now, the problem with classical music is that it's not a natural moneymaker, and never has been. It's always been supported by rich people, governments, aristocracy in the past, and it's never been something that makes a lot of money just through ticket sales. But the fact that it is not a natural moneymaker doesn't mean that you can't dip your toe into something that might make money. Now, apps occasionally do. It's not easy. A lot of them fail. But I thought, why not develop an app that perhaps could make some money and then hopefully generate some income on a regular basis for the orchestra. So that is the intention. If we can turn this into a success, a portion of the profits or the revenue will be directed towards supporting the orchestra. So that's really what inspired it. The actual idea there was more about the fact that I never knew what was on, and I never knew when the orchestra was playing. And I thought if I could have something that would conveniently provide that information and perhaps send me a little notification when I happen to go to an area where something of interest to me is actually playing. So I'm hoping in due course to add a feature to the app whereby you can ask for notifications if you happen to move into an area where somebody is playing and you've indicated an interest to hear about those events. So that is part of the idea, and that's really why it came about.
Excellent. Now, you've launched this app to enable users to access details of classical music concerts involving specific artists, venues, music genres, and various event categories. But who is it actually aimed at? Is it just the music lovers, or is it for venues, performers, promoters, or indeed all of them?
It is actually for all of them, and they're all going to be beneficiaries. Basically, we are a conduit between people who want to know the information and the people who want others to know about it. So you've got your promoters, you've got your concerts, organizers, you've got the musicians, and you've got the venues. They want to try and fill seats. They want people to know about their events. And then you've got users like me or anybody else who might like to go to events in the evening who want to know about it and often just don't seem to know about things, or we're trying to provide a convenient way of finding that out. So really, it should be that there are lots of beneficiaries here. And the advantage of this, though, is because we're using the technology to make it that much easier. You know, the process of getting the message across that a concert is taking place is quite an expensive one. Advertising, traditional advertising, is very expensive. This ultimately should be a much easier way, providing it gets some traction, to get that message across to people who might be interested. And hopefully it will help to fill seats.
So if we do have any promoters listening to the show today, how would they go about promoting an event and actually getting it listed on your app?
Well, we have a website, and they can go to the website and register and then start entering their events. And this is part of the beauty of this particular app, is that we can actually put events in there for any size venue. So somebody doing a local concert in a church or a pub or a music club could enter that event, and immediately, or virtually immediately, it ends up on the app, and that can be accessed by anybody who's using it, who happens to be in the area, who's local, or who is going to that area. You can quite easily put in a location search if you're going somewhere, and then bring back all the events that we put in. So I think it's a splendid way of actually getting people to put it in. Now, currently, we are putting a lot of data in, and I'm paying quite a lot of people to do that. Ultimately, I'm hoping down the line, when we get some traction and people start to know about Jubal and want their data to be on there, that those venues, those orchestras, those musicians who want to be on there will start to take that responsibility on and actually simply want it there and either put it in themselves or give somebody an instruction who's already putting that data in somewhere else that they should also put it onto Jubal, because that ultimately should help everybody.
Now, our American friends have a great saying. I think it's something like the riches are in the niches. And I love how you've created something valuable by focusing in on your niche and also by actually using technology to improve the world of classical music. I think it's a great fusion. But I've got to ask, was there a realisation in the industry that some of the biggest and most beautiful venues, such as the Royal Albert Hall, Birmingham Symphony Hall, could actually leverage technology to improve the experience of classical music?
Well, I'm sure that they themselves must be thinking along these lines and thinking, how can we take advantage of this revolution? But we're really just providing another way to do so, and perhaps to make it that much easier and much more generic. You see, the Royal Albert Hall could, and maybe has, or is considering, just going off and setting up its own app, or using some similar technology to try and get the message out. But that will just be for the Royal Albert Hall, which means having, an app for the Royal Albert Hall and an app for the Royal Festival Hall or an app for the Birmingham Symphony Hall, which nobody really wants hundreds of apps just to cover these different things. Much better, surely, to have a central app that actually provides the whole lot. So ultimately, we are providing that conduit for them. And hopefully it will actually connect these people very much more simply and more generically right the way across.
Absolutely. I think there is a hell of a lot of app fatigue out there, and people, like you said, don't want hundreds of apps when they could have one that covers everything. But was there any resistance from the community or the venues, or have they, to most part, largely embraced this?
I think it's too early days for us to say whether there's resistance. No, there's no resistance to it, but there may be a certain apathy because until it gets a name, people don't tend to take it very seriously. So our problem is to get the name out there so that people start realizing, well, actually, this can work. And they can realize that it's worth being on there because people are seeing it. When they start to hear somebody saying, well, I came to you because I found you on Jubal, that's when I think venues and orchestras, hopefully, will start to take us more seriously. As I said, it's early days. So we need to start encouraging these people to get on board and recognize that they will be beneficiaries down the line and perhaps try and help us. And in fact, we're planning a big campaign to try and do that in order to spread the word and increase the number of downloads we have. But resistance, no. But just, is it going to happen or not comes down to getting other people galvanized to try and help us.
So what's been your biggest challenge in making Jubal? I mean, and making that app for classical music a reality and getting it out there? Have you encountered many challenges along the way?
Well, there are endless challenges with any business. And with this one, there have been lots of technical challenges, trying to think our way through. I've been rather insistent on trying to make it very easy to use. And that has, so I've been going back to my developers and saying, no, we've got to have it easier than this. It's got to work like this, etc. So that takes time, money, and there's a big element of trial and error with it. But we're getting over that. The big challenge ahead of us, is, as I've already touched upon, is to spread the word. This is much harder. It's very expensive through traditional kind of advertising. It becomes pretty prohibitive. So we're looking at smarter ways of trying to spread the word. And, if we can do that and get some proper traction, then I think there's a chance that this app could take off. And of course, another huge challenge is the data, and that will be a permanent challenge. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of data to get in, especially as we are covering more than just classical. I mean, this is a great classical app, and our intention is absolutely to provide as much information as we possibly can about all classical events that are going on in any particular area in the UK, and hopefully including small venues, as I said. But that is a massive task for a relatively small group of people to do. As I also touched on earlier, if we ever get the traction and people want their data on, that will become much easier if a venue will take on the responsibility and say, yes, we will put our data in because this is worth it. And I think from their side, they will be pleased that they can put in all their data. And I'm not just telling them you can only put in your classical concerts, we will only promote your classical concerts. That's not the message. I'm not overly precious about it. The fact is that if somebody just wants to see classical music, that's all they have to see in the app, because they will simply make the settings appropriate for classical concerts. But if they want to see something else because they've got their children with them or their grandchildren and there's something else that they want to see and those people don't want to see classical music, they can switch it on at a moment and see other events. So there's a tremendous bonus for venues there. And ultimately, when they say they'll put in their own data, that will make life a lot easier for us. But at the moment, we are trying to get in as much as we possibly can so that it really covers it and there's a great, rich database there.
I think that's a fantastic move that you're doing there, because my favourite venue here in Birmingham is obviously the Symphony Hall, and it's not just classical music there. And I was only a couple of weeks ago, I saw Robert Plant, former singer of Led Zeppelin. He was fantastic there, and equally you can see comedians and other acts there. So I think it is important to have that option to see others there for people that just love that particular venue.
Well, I think that as well. This is an ongoing argument, I have to admit, with my partners who would prefer to focus specifically on classical music. But as I said, if it does that absolutely as well as it possibly could, and that is fully the intention, why should one then say no to this other side so that somebody can access it if they want to?
So does the continuously updating of Apple and Android operating systems, does that make it difficult or time consuming for someone such as yourself to try and keep that app updated and working on lots of different devices, or do you have a team that just looks after that for you?
Well, no, I am very involved with it. I'm very concerned with the quality of the app and trying, continuously to be improving it. And there are always further improvements ahead. We've got a big update coming. So, yes, it is challenging, it is time consuming, and it is expensive because, getting things better always takes work, and quite a lot of it. And the more complicated it becomes, the bigger the system, the harder it is to update it without breaking something else. So there's a lot of thought about it, development time, and then testing time before you actually go live with it. So yes, it doesn't happen overnight, improvements, but there's a constant process, and I'm very committed to that because I'm proud of what we've done, and I want to get it that much better, and I know we can. That is an ongoing process, but yeah, it's difficult, time-consuming, and expensive.
So refreshing to hear that you have that right ethos and that right attitude there about continuously improving the platform. So what are your big plans for the app, and how do you expect it to evolve over the next few years, and what is your grand vision? Is there anything you can share about that?
Well, we've got some big improvements underway. We've got an Android version that we're hoping to deliver within a couple of months or so. The push notifications that I mentioned is a feature that I want to add in. We haven't yet added that in, whereby you go to a town, you've said, I'm interested in a particular orchestra, for instance, and they happen to be doing an orchestra there, and a little notification comes through to you to tell you that, one of your chosen performers is playing, something like that. I think that would be quite useful. But this will be in the hands of the user. They'll be able to switch it off if they find it irritating. We will try to manage it in a way so that it isn't irritating. It's just a gentle reminder that something you showed interest in happens to be taking place. And if you happen to be free, that might be useful that you got that. So that's the intention. And I'm sure there will be lots of other improvements as well. I mean, I'm trying to enrich the data by adding bios of performers and things like that, which we don't currently have. So there'll be different sections, different things that people can access if they're interested to read them, but don't have to if they're not. So lots of improvements and lots to do, very exciting. Unfortunately, it will come down to the whole traction thing, though, because one obviously cannot go on doing something like this indefinitely if it never catches on. So we've got to think of really clever ways of getting the message out there and hopefully getting lots of downloads. Once we've got those, then we have a platform from which to move forward, if you like, with orchestras, venues to get them on side, and possibly even, another investor who might want to take it to another level. And, because you can spend an awful lot on promoting things to try and get them to be a sort of household name. But we would like very much to get some reasonable traction with which to go and talk to such people.
Well, a huge thank you for coming on today. But before I do let you go, could I just ask that you remind the listeners of how they can download the app, visit your website, or indeed contact yourself or a member of your team if they've got any questions about our conversation today?
Sure. I mean, our website is there at www.jubal.co.uk. Jubal is spelled Jubal. The app is available on an iPhone from the iPhone App Store. And you can contact through us through our website or direct to our email, contact@jubal.co.uk.
Well, I love what you're doing there with that fusion of technology to bring classical music lovers, venues, performers and promoters all together on this one app. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I wish you all the best for the future. And a big thank you for coming on and sharing that story with us today.
Well, thank you, Neil, very much for your time and giving us this opportunity.
Like I said in the episode there, for me, here in the West Midlands, the Symphony Hall is by far my favourite venue. The acoustics in there are out of this world. I mean, recently I've seen Robert Plant and comedian Rob Brydon. Not on the same night, that would be a strange gig. But in a few months I'm also going to see David Byrne from Talking Heads. And although I'm not a classical music fan as such, Jubal would be of great use to me if it provided the option to let me see other events too. I think Francis is right there that it should default to only showing classical for its niche audience. But also having the option for people like me that likes to dip my toes in some of the best venues this country has to offer, having that additional option would be fantastic too. But hey, that's just my thoughts. Would you like one app that shows you all your favourite venues inside one smartphone application? that can tell you who's playing, where and when? Or are you happy with individual apps for each venue? For me personally, wherever I am in the world, I just want to grab one app that tells me everything I need to know about my entertainment needs in that area. But hey, this isn't a dictatorship. Email me your thoughts to techblogwriter@outlook.com, tweet me at Neil C. Hughes with your insights, or equally record me your virtual voicemail or question over at techblogwriter.co.uk/podcasts. So a big thank you to Francis Hornack and his forward-thinking app Jubal, and I really do hope that this one app can unite music lovers, venues, performers, orchestras and promoters. And finally, an even bigger thank you for each and every one of you that have tuned in and indeed tune in every day. So until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.